Hello and welcome to the final episode of the ANF podcast of 2022 with me, Al Coates,
Scott Casson-Rennie,
Paula Coates,
and
Tristan Casson-Rennie.
Woohoo! It's like one of those radio where we all clap and the posse are in the house, aren't they?
We should have that over noise thing.
The over noise thing. Like
well,
clapping.
I don't think Sky uses it anymore, so we could use it, couldn't we?
It's true. So, Scott, you had this bright idea that we bring in our spouses for the final podcast of the year. What was that all about then? Why did that seem like a good idea at the time?
Well, we would normally do the Queen's speech, wouldn't we? And we'd do a little... And, well, obviously we can't do a Queen's speech anymore. God rest her soul. But, yeah, too soon for a King's speech? Don't know. So let's just... We're ever evolving, ever changing. So let's just do something different. And let's give... these two the opportunity to talk publicly again, because it went so well the last time. So
it did. People were raving about us for weeks and weeks.
That is a word that could be used. The complaints department were very busy. So shall we just open it up to them and tell them how's your year been? Well, shall we start with Tris?
Yeah.
We'll start with Tris. Tris, how's your year been? Any highlights? Anything happened? Anything you want to remark on?
It's been a busy year, something that I never expected to happen after I retired at 45. But yeah, it's been remarkably busy. It's had its ups and downs, probably a couple of downs, more than ups. A few helicopter rides in there. And some trauma for good measure. We seem to have got through the year with the same number of children that we started with, so that's always a bonus.
No more.
No,
we had the phone cut off. No more.
It's not even funny. So tell me, because you've had a really busy year in the sense that you've started a charity, and that charity's really gathered some momentum. But in the midst of all that, I guess most people who listen will know that Scott had a moment in March last year, and boy, has he milked it ever since. I shouldn't say that, should I? That sounds really flippant. But I'll get into trouble afterwards.
You will.
Mrs. Coates
I think that FASD Ireland was stealing the limelight, so he wanted to bring the attention back to himself.
Oh my days. That's just rude.
So the irony, though, then there is some irony in this, in that, if he had not have had that aneurysm when he did, and this is really significant, that one of the visits I did in the early days down to Cork, and Cork was a city that we'd been to a few times, but we wouldn't necessarily go there, just as to visit. And on this particular day, I was walking from the hospital back to the car, and I saw a poster up just saying, "Are you a social entrepreneur? Do you have an organization that exists to help the general public in Ireland for the better? If you do, get in touch with us." And I literally took a photograph of it and then forgot all about it. Came back to the office a couple of days later, went onto the website and applied to take part in Social Entrepreneurs Ireland Ideas Academy, of which I'm now, well, they call me an alumni and a graduate of. And the organisation, as a result of that, has been remarkably successful in achieving grant funding from Bank of America and Life's Too Good Foundation from the west of Ireland. And that's funding the National FASD Hub for Ireland, which we're launching after Christmas. So had it not been for Scott having that moment, I would never have seen that poster. I would never have been able to be in a position a year later to be able to say we're opening a national FASD hub. So you know what? Some things happen for a reason.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I mean, you're pulling out quite a silver lining from what was a very dark cloud.
It's funny because he's been asked about it before. Where was it? Oh, it was when we opened the offices. He wasn't asked about it, but part of his opening remarks for the opening of the offices included a little bit about that. But he couldn't bring himself to do it because he found it, as soon as he thought about it, it upset him. And I think that we're now 9 months from when it happened. And I think that actually it was quite traumatizing for you. I mean, it's quite traumatizing for me as well, I have to say. But I think that everything that happened to this day, I think Tris still knows more about what happened and all the stuff that, my kind of body and brain went through when I wasn't awake. Because they probably told me when I woke up, but I was too busy tweeting rubbish.
Yes.
For the first couple of weeks. The first couple of weeks, I don't remember very much after waking up. So, and I think that it still probably upsets him to think about. I'm just surmising this because it's not the sort of thing that we sit and discuss every night. Obviously, we talk about my health and how I'm feeling and stuff, but we don't really talk about what happened. Something might come on the telly. There was something on the telly, wasn't there, a couple of months ago on 24 hours in A&E, and somebody came in with a ruptured aneurysm in the brain. And it was like, okay, so, we sat and talked about it. We don't sit and talk about it all the time, of course, because, you don't do that. It's like, if someone has, I don't know, an operation, you don't then sit and talk about it every night for the rest of the time. But I think when it affects your brain the way it did mine, and bearing in mind the kind of language that I now understand to use. So, I have 4 aneurysms, 2 ruptured and 2 didn't. And the 2 that ruptured could have killed me. The 2 that are still there that haven't ruptured, they will check on every year to make sure that they're not growing or getting any bigger. If they do, then I'll have to go in and have the same procedure if they can get to them in the same way. So it's kind of an ongoing health issue, if you like. And they said to you when it first happened, I would maybe get a certain capacity of my brain function back.
Yeah, they talked about sort of 90 to 93% brain function. I would say we're pretty much there now. I still see gaps. So I think it's fair to say Scott recognises some of those gaps.
I think I'm better now than I ever been.
and I was talking to one of the. So when Scott went in for a checkup recently in Cork, I was talking to one of the specialists while he was out, and I said, having parented 2 children with, one with a diagnosis of FASD and another with a question mark FASD, who's too old to want to have a diagnosis now, and learning NVR and everything that I've learned about how to parent them with their brain injury, because that's what FASD is.
Yeah.
Effectively, it helped me, and it has helped me, and it continues to help me when I recognise that Scott responds now in a way that he never did for the 24 years. And in our 25th year, he responds differently to a lot of things now. And so I have more of an understanding in how to communicate, or how we communicate, so that I'm always aware that there's nothing going to escalate or nothing going to dysregulate him, because he doesn't have that self-regulatory function. That's gone. That's one of the 7% parts of his brain that hasn't returned. And so sometimes, and I can give you a really brief example. We were in Copenhagen. The trains had stopped because somebody had been shot in Stockholm, and the trains run through to Copenhagen. And Scott literally went into what we would call dysregulation and meltdown, whatever you want to call it. But he was hitting out at anybody and everybody around him because he couldn't process that the trains weren't calling and that we needed to get on the train to go to a hotel. And so it was a case of having to say, okay, I'm going to deal with this how I deal with it with one of the children. And so I stepped out. I walked outside of the airport. I made sure he was safe, but I stepped out, went out, had a breath, had a word with myself about what I was going to do, and then went back in and just, used some distraction techniques and had that conversation, and everything was fine again. But I'm acutely aware, because of having had to learn how to parent our own children. And this isn't parenting, but this is just about learning to recognize those traits of behaviors for people with acquired brain injuries, that they've lived normally for all of their lives and then acquired an injury. And to me, I couldn't have got through the last year. Absolutely, I couldn't have got through the last year without having some of that knowledge, because
back knowledge, yeah.
The families who deal with or who are with the survivors of aneurysms are often the ones that the health service forgets. They provide all of the care and the procedures to look after the people with that injury, but they don't talk about, or they don't talk to, or they don't tell us what life is going to be like for us afterwards. And so that's a real issue. And I think, I've taken a lot of interest in organisations now that support, both in the UK and Ireland, that support people and families with brain injuries, because it's mad how actually working with families with FASD, it's not a hop, skip and a jump away from families with acquired brain injuries. And so for me, the two are very similar. That might provoke loads of discussion outside of this podcast, but that's my findings.
Yeah, I mean, don't know whether you've got any questions, Paul. I don't want to cut across you if you want to ask any questions, because I've got loads of questions or comments. That's my job, to be nosy. But I was wondering, sort of drawing this back to the context of being in a family with adopted children and children with, like all of our, I say all of our adopted children, but a lot of our adopted children have complex needs, have interesting takes. How was it then managing children who have that background, have that complexity and that kind of that uncertainty? How is it you're sort of all of a sudden you've got Neil, the husband, you've got children, and you're trying to keep I think one of the things I remember talking to you about was we need to just calm the funk down. Everybody needs to, and that is something that I know that, I'd love to, of course, that's what you do, is you tell your children to calm down, and it works wonderfully, doesn't it? That's how we've always managed. We just tell them to be calm, and it just works. But the stakes were really high for you, weren't they? In the sense of keeping everything calm. So what? Yeah. I mean, I know Scott was sort of somewhat oblivious to a lot of things for quite a lot of the year, but I remember having a few conversations with you where you were kind of like, everyone needs to just calm the funk down.
Yeah, I mean, something that went on behind the scenes that nobody will be aware of is that, I can remember sitting on Station Road in Ennis in my car, talking to Al on my hands-free, dark at night, windows steamed up because I've been in the car pretty much a couple of hours driving back from Cork. And I rang Al and I said, Al, I don't know what to do here. The nursing staff are getting really worried about Scott's mental health and the ability of his brain to recover, because he's getting inundated with messages and texts, and they're all well wishes, but Scott, by his nature, is wanting to reply to them all. And unfortunately, the amount of time that he's allowed to be on his phone is 5 minutes every hour, and the nurses have found that he's hiding his phone and he's on his phone all the time, and they want me to take it off him. So can we do something? Yeah, bad patient. So can we do something? And we again, between Al and I, at the dead of night, we constructed this idea that Al would do on-air updates about Scott, but also just pleading with people who wanted to wish Scott well to send messages that didn't need a reply, so that they were just messages of get well but don't reply. And that worked amazingly well. And I think everything else following that stemmed from being able to design these strategies to support Scott's recovery, because it was a long, arduous road. And I mean, we're we're not quite the year out yet. No. But I mean, again, people won't have known, but when Scott was discharged, I was told he was only being discharged from hospital because COVID was on the increase and that he was not well enough to fight COVID and for his brain to recover. So he needed to come home, and his brain needed to recover at home where he was less likely to get COVID. And I was told that his chances of survival were 50-50 for the first 6 months. And so every morning I would wake up, reach across and just check he was breathing. And that for me was like a lifetime. That was like, I was scared to go to sleep every night, but I was equally scared when I woke up. I I just couldn't ever imagine. And I know people do this, but I could never imagine what it'd be like to wake up next to your husband and he's dead. And to me, that was the stuff that nightmares are made of. And so when we got to 6 months out, it was almost a small celebration. It was like one of those, I need to celebrate this moment, but I'm not going to, because I don't want him to know. I mean, we talked about it since, but I don't want him to know how significant this date is. And that 50-50 survival rate then dissipated quite considerably because it got over the first 6 months. We know now that, he's got on a 10-year cycle. So every year for 10 years, he's got to have an inspection to see whether the sites are vulnerable and whether they're prone to burst again. But other than that, we know that his chances of survival are increasing every single day. But those first 6 months, it was just critical. And, there was one point, I think I just reached breaking point, and I took to Facebook. And I know I always say people shouldn't take to social media, but I took to Facebook and I begged and pleaded with family members just to get on a plane and come and give me a break, just to come over. Family, friends, didn't matter. Just somebody to come over and just give me an hour off, because it wasn't that I was doing anything. I'm the world's worst housekeeper. I clean as I go, but I only clean my mess, nobody else's, right? So I wasn't lazy. Everything we had been ploughed into FASD Island in the February, and this happened in the March. So I had to juggle that. I had to juggle husband, had to juggle children. And I just couldn't do it. And I reached burnout in April, May. And then it was when I put the flag up and said, I need help. And, thankfully, and I know, Al, you came over and it cut the lawn for us, which was, a godsend, because for me, the lawnmower is like the Hoover. I just don't understand it at all. We had a number of people respond. And there's no way I could have got through that without that help.
That didn't answer my question at all. I think my question was about sort of the children and kind of keeping, because I think that
to be fair, I know this story, so I can tell it. So eldest son didn't really get the seriousness of it when it first happened. So Tris was on the phone to him saying, "You need to come over. You need to come home." Well, I can't get time off. No, you need to come home. And bear in mind, this was in the first 24, 48 hours. So, at that point, might as well have just been dead. So he really didn't get that. So you had that to manage. Thankfully, our friends Helen and Naomi, they picked it up. Helen booked Fraser's flight. She went to get him. Between the two of them, they just said, "You need to go. It's that simple. You need to go. Don't worry about work." And to be fair, his boss was really good. Brandon was just Brandon, wasn't he? But he's quiet anyway, so you wouldn't really know what was going on behind the.
Brandon spoke to his boss and took 2 weeks off to be at home to look after Jacob.
Yeah.
But I think for Brandon, it was more about he could get 2 weeks off with pay. I'd like to, exactly. I'd like to think that there was some sort of compassion there as well. But, I know myself.
Exactly.
And Brandon is contemplative soul, and he did do lots of thinking. And when I offered him the opportunity to come with me to the hospital, he did not want to go. His actual words were, "I want to remember Daddy as I remember him," because we went out of the woods at that point. Yeah. And there was never a debate. It was always okay as long as you're okay with that. And every time I went to Cork, I would always say to him, "Would you like to come with me?" And his answer was always the same. Jacob, on the other hand, didn't want anybody to know and was furious that his rugby team knew about it and were asking how Daddy was and is there anything they could do. They were giving him lifts to and from rugby, and they were cooking his dinners and all sorts of stuff. But he was furious that how dare we share our innermost family secrets with anybody else. It's nobody else's business. I've had people come up to me in the street, he'd say, and ask me how Daddy is, and well, it's none of their business how my daddy is. And so we had a long conversation with Jacob after. So when Scott got back home, we had a long conversation about, it's important that you have people around you that can support you. And at that time, the best way for Jacob to keep occupied was with rugby. So I called on the rugby team to help us, and of course they did.
And I think that the only thing that really sticks in my mind was about 2 days after I got home, really, from hospital. And Jacob just had a bit of a meltdown, didn't he? I mean, he doesn't have them very often as a rule these days, but he had quite a meltdown, and I didn't see it, but there was a lot of kind of physical touching between you and him, as in him towards you. No, I don't mean like that. You know, I'm talking about the kind of CPV stuff that we talk about quite a lot. There was a little bit of that.
Yeah.
And the following weekend as well, he did disappear for a couple of hours until the policeman.
The Gardaí brought him home in a van, along with the bike he stole and the TV remotes from the house. And they made him take the bike back to the neighbours where it came from, which was fine. They did all that. And they didn't hold him by the ear or anything. And then they brought him in. He ran upstairs. And they were chatting to me, not about him, because they all know Jacob very well. But not like that. They just know that he has some complications. Yeah. They know he's a child in
it's a relatively small town as well, isn't it? So it's
it's the village is 230 odd people. So, but so the guards were here like chatting in the living room with me, and next thing the TV goes on and the volume goes up really, really loud. And I'm looking at the guards and they're looking at me and I'm going, I can't, where's the remote? I can't find them. Well, Jacob was up in his bedroom. He'd decided that he didn't want the guards to listen to any more of this rubbish from me. Turned the telly on from his bedroom, turned the volume on full, and the guards had left.
Oh, bless him.
Clever boy.
But, hugely complicated. But you're at the end of your year now. So you've made. Does it feel like, wow, this is a marker? Because I mean, New Year's a marker, isn't it, for a lot of people?
Yeah,
but does it
always,
feel like let's get that one behind us?
I mean, definitely, I've reflected a lot on it this year. I think getting to Christmas, you do anyway, don't you? And that wasn't the year that we had planned. The year that we had planned looked very, very different to the one that we just had. But there's a lot of things that did happen. FASD Ireland. The plan was that I was leaving Adoption Plus, and I think it's worthwhile mentioning that Adoption Plus were amazing because I hadn't left when I went into hospital, but they kept me on the books, and financially, I mean, it would have been hard, but they kept paying me for I think a month or two after it happened.
You were in your notice. Were you in your notice period? So like they could have just said, "Oh well."
They could have done, but the board at Adoption Plus agreed to continue paying me, which I'm so grateful for, because at that point we had just literally a month earlier sunk all of our savings into FASD Ireland in the hope that I would work for FASD Ireland full time, and the income would be generated and all that sort of stuff. And obviously that didn't happen. Just that kind of kindness was so appreciated. And even I know Paula said she had nothing to do with it, but the GoFundMe that Elaine set up, signed off Elaine and Paula. Without that, I mean, there's no getting away from the fact that I was spending
€100 a day getting to and from Cork with diesel, parking, food. I mean, it was an 8-hour round trip for me, and that GoFundMe kept me going without having to worry about going cap in hand to the bank or, touching the savings that we had got left. And, we had the worry for a significant period of time of the €16,000 fee for the helicopter. But thankfully, that didn't materialize. And I mean, I wouldn't have minded if we got Avios, if we'd have earned Avios on it. But anyway. But
I wouldn't have minded if I'd got champagne in the first class seat on it, but I didn't. I was strapped to a living bed,
but I mean, after the skis.
Yes, exactly.
There was a period of time where the concern started to appear around medical bills, the cost of treatment, the emergency room, all of that, because as probably people know, Ireland has a mixed private and public health service, and it's not like the UK where it's free at the point of entry. There's certain preconditions that have to be met. Fortunately, and this is very fortunately, because we have Jacob with his additional needs and his diagnosis, then as carers of Jacob, then we qualify for the free medical care here. So we were very fortunate in that respect. And I mean, I totally understand families who are put in the position where they have a very ill, serious relative, and the bills turn up afterwards, and it's enough to knock them off the planet when they get those bills in. We were very lucky, and Scott will have done. And on his birthday, he put a kind of give funding for the helicopter service because it is a charitable service here. We recognised that had that air ambulance not turned up within 8 minutes, he wouldn't be here. We had 40 minutes to get him to a medical facility, and that helicopter got here within 8 minutes.
So yeah, on reflection, a mixed year, shall we say? But here to tell the tale, I'm sure there's some going, oh, that's a shame. But there's only little things now that really affect me. Tiredness is one of them. We'll say. Disruption, yeah. I mean, now, I used to, change was fine for me, used to be fine, but anything changing now, I'm just like,
when the oven blew up on Christmas Day, that was enough to finish him off.
Yeah. Thankfully, everything was cooked and ready, but, it was just like, okay, how are we going to get through? But to be fair, they're small things, really, and I will get used to managing them, and I have to remind myself that it's nobody's fault. These things aren't anybody's fault. And yes, I can, go a bit, grumpy for a while or whatever. But actually, like Tris says, he just leaves the room, lets me get on with it, and I'm fine again.
He has a senior moment.
But one of the positives, Al, is that, some of the interviews that we've done, I've been on fire this last couple of months. I mean, some of them, I'm even surprising myself. I mean, and I don't know if that's something in my brain that's going, okay, you don't need to worry about the confrontational side of this, because actually you're a podcast, you're allowed to ask these questions. But previously, I would never have done stuff like that. Do you know, it's quite a strange feeling.
Well, I mean, there was a period where you were neither use nor ornament, I'll be honest with you. I'd say things like, we're going to interview this person, you'd go, whatever. And then you would just, be fine, you'd go, what are we doing? Who is it? Why are we talking to them? Who am I? Where am I? And I'd go, yeah. But the one thing you were adamant about was you weren't going to be left out. No, but it is, I've seen, real sharpness. And like you said, it's like, a bit more bolshy.
Yeah. Weird. Very weird.
Yeah, a bit Paxman-esque.
Maybe. Yeah, maybe a little bit, yeah.
Maybe it's the survival thing. Maybe it's, this is a near-death experience and I've survived. I think that's a confidence thing as well.
Yeah, nothing to lose now. Puts it in perspective, doesn't it?
Exactly. So that's it. 2022 is done. September next year, I go in for my little procedure and have a couple of days off, and it'll be like that for the next 10 years. But, he
doesn't mind the procedure because he gets a really stunning male nurse who has to push down on his groin for 10 minutes.
Yeah.
It's the most attention he gets these days.
Well, you got to get your kicks where you can. You've been married 25 years.
Well, exactly. Yes, this is very true. So, so that's where we are. So tell us about your year, Paula. Because to be fair, you've not had, you've had a finger issue. But apart from that, medically, but how have things...
finger issue, yeah. It's still an issue, isn't it?
But yeah, that's the least of our worries.
It is.
I think the main thing, I would be interested to know your reflections on the year where we haven't had an addition to our family, haven't we?
Yeah.
In less than, how could you put it? Less than ideal circumstances? Not planned. I don't know what is it anything to do with us? I don't know.
Okay.
You.
Over to me.
Over to you. Sulk in the corner.
I think this time last year, I was really stressed. We were really stressed. But, I had a daughter who was kind of just given up, not interested in school, getting phone calls from school. She's not here. We don't know where she is. Do you know where she is? No, we don't know where she is. And it was just really traumatic, kind of going in the morning to wake her up. You need, come on, we've got half an hour, you need to get ready. Yes, I'll be ready. You've got 2 minutes to get ready. I'm not going. And we had this kind of went on. And if something presses my buttons, it presses Al's buttons because my buttons are pressed. You know what I mean? So
mine come out in sympathy.
So I think it's difficult because, I mean, obviously, Scott, you really know us as a couple, and I can, if I can kind of, Al's in London a lot, and so I could ring him up and say, she's not here, or she's not going, or whatever, and it really did stress me out. So he tries to go on the extra calm, and there's nothing you can do about it, but his voice, underneath he's angry, and it comes to me. So it's just, he's very stressed. And it's like, what do you want me to do? And what do you want me to say? And what do you want me to do about it? Now, I find that really difficult. And this has kind of been a theme of our marriage when there's been a disruption with a kid, with one of our children or anything. And I have to tell him, because I feel better when I talk about it. It really helps me to go, blah. And he finds it really, really difficult to hear my stress. So it's kind of been trying to go through a lot of trauma as we've had over the years with children and things. And one of the worst things, like I say, is I can call Al, this is happening, this is happening, this is happening. And when he says, I'm here, I'm in London, what do you expect me to do about it? And all I need is just for him to listen and say, it must be really crap. You know what I mean? But he obviously, I can get from where he is, he's in London, he's got caseloads, he's got this, he's got that, he's got the other, and he's got me stressed out. And
are you bearing my secrets? I'm back.
No, and I think it's just the way we deal with trauma that's happening to us. Al has got a learned way of putting it into a shed and shutting the door and kind of, right, that's for later or whatever. My way is, I've got to just tell it as it is straight away. Then I can walk away and feel better because I've done that. But what that does to him is it just makes him feel worse because he's in London and I'm she's trashed her room, she's done whatever's happened, and he's kind of left in London, feeling very guilty. He's not here to help me, and so the kind of the dynamics of our relationship, and it's not that he's wrong and I'm right or vice versa. It's just the way you deal with things. But we have kind of had quite a lot of teenagers in our lives. We've got a teenager coming.
5 last count. Yeah. 6 looming.
And it's been quite a roller coaster. And then we sorry, I'm full of cold. Last year it became really difficult, and it was kind of over this time of year where there was a boyfriend involved. We weren't, keen, and it was just very difficult. And then, sorry,
it was interesting. I think because you have a drink, my darling. I think that I really drew on my kind of the NVR principles about it. It became really protracted, and I think I probably talked a bit about having run-ins with the school welfare officer and stuff, the education welfare officer. But I think for me it was really about prioritising what mattered for our daughter, because actually there was this danger. I felt there was this danger she could disappear, we'd lose her forever if we batten down the hatches with every single rule and regulation, and just really drew on the idea that actually what really matters is she needs to know that we love her.
Yeah.
Which was not necessarily the feelings we were having. And so we kept resetting our mind around what was really important to us. So the school was important, but actually we thought, in the grand scheme of things, the most important thing to us, we kept trying to reset ourselves on our relationship with our daughter, and just maintaining that at a tolerable level. And that, not that we agreed with everything that she said or did, not that she agreed with everything we said or did, but maintaining that sense of connection, because I just thought, how many times do you hear these stories of teenagers and parents falling out over something?
Yeah.
And then never speaking for 10 years. And I just saw the potential in that with her. So sorry, you were going to say, Scott?
No.
All right. Okay.
We've just got a little addition to the podcast here.
Oh, a little cat. Which one of your cats is that?
It's Junior.
That's Junior. He wants to get in on the act. Sorry,
I'll come to him later. Anyway, so Paul, you were, because you're full of cold. So
I am full of cold. Yeah, not very well. So it was quite interesting. I mean, it was one of those things where we've had a group of therapists involved in our family for quite a long time.
A crack team of therapists.
Really, really good. And, you know, they've been great support for the kids, great support for us. We've got adoption support funding. And it was kind of... So I started to see the lady that's been seeing Rosa, and I would just come in every now and then and, like, have my own chat with her and stuff. And she just put a really good perspective. You know, she was very, very compassionate to me. I kind of we went in, and I just broke down, and I just said, I feel like I'm an absolute rotten mother. You know, I felt absolutely, all these kids that we've got, you know, I just feel like I'm just rubbish at it all. Mm-hmm. And she really did help us, didn't she? She really built me up a lot. And a psychotherapist, and it was just really good for me at the time, because I realised that, because obviously our daughter having kind of therapy, you know, that was private and that was between them. But I was also given space to kind of go in and talk to her and just be able to see, you know, say how I felt and how things were difficult. And she was very, very good at just letting me see it from our daughter's perspective, you know, just say, you know, like, just like what you would see as an issue, what I would see as an issue, actually quite often wasn't the issue. I would go out of the room thinking, and without having that, I think things would have got really, really difficult. But just being able to have that input, even a phone call or me just sending her a text, and to actually just to have her, well, it wasn't her sticking up for her and saying, no, well, it was just a different perspective. Yeah. Thinking, no, that actually, that, you know, that kind of not going to school or not doing this, she wasn't coping with something, which, you know, that was never divulged or whatever. Anyway, you know, we got to a point, and one of the things that I used to worry myself sick about was, I just hope she doesn't get pregnant. That you know, of all the things. I remember sitting with Elaine, our friend, a long time ago, and just saying, the very thought of that terrifies me. Absolutely terrifies me. Elaine's very different, very laid back. She kind of takes things as they come, however big or small it is. I'm not. I'm a bit of like, oh. Mm-hmm. And so it happened. We got this announcement that she was pregnant. Well, actually, I got a call from school saying, can you come in? We need to speak to you. Oh, and I had a feeling. I thought, I know what this is. And so I was at my niece's having lunch. So I rang Al. I said, school want you to go in. Well, because there'd been so much truancy, he just thought, oh, it's just, you know, truant.
Mm-hmm. She's over-truanted.
And I think I kind of
ran the truant.
And I think I kind of hinted she could be pregnant, and he, you know, she could be pregnant, and he was like, "Don't be ridiculous." I remember him just saying, "Don't be ridiculous." Of course, you know. And I thought,
I'm naive.
Anyway, and I did. I just sat and I thought, this is what, you know. And so he'd gone to school and met, and of course the teacher said, "Rosa's here. This is what's happened," and it absolutely just threw me. She was 16, and I just can imagine, you know, we all can. The boyfriend's got a good job, been together a long time, and I was there at the birth with him, and she wanted me there, and it was amazing, and she is an amazing mum. So that, you know, that's been quite tricky. I mean, you know, obviously at first, you know, we kind of said, right, we sat and talked to them, this and this. She wanted the baby. She was having that baby. She wanted the baby before the baby was even a baby. You know, we kind of realised that that was her intention. And we kind of had them, they were living here. He works an hour away, lives an hour away, so he was kind of travelling in and out and stuff, and we just kind of really tried to support them, and they moved an hour away.
Yeah. But, I mean, it's a complicated story because it's not ideal, but actually it is, I think reflecting across several of my children is that what they never really wanted parents. Does that sound, they wanted carers. Staff. Well, they wanted carers. Mm-hmm. They wanted care, but they didn't really want replacement parents. Mm. And that is a complicated thing because I think we actually, having reconciled ourselves to that, it feels like our relationship's much more healthy, and they still want us in their life. They absolutely want us in their life, but they want a relationship where they've got much more autonomy, which is fine when you're 18, not when you're 16 or 15 or 14 or 12 or 3, which was the case. And I think if we'd known that with hindsight, I think if we'd have clicked that much a long time ago, I think some of the challenges we'd faced would have probably been, we'd have found a way through them a bit more. But actually, now our relationship with all of our children is as good as it's been in a long, long time. Really, really positive. And that she's moved out is removed that conflict from the home. Yeah. That's the reality. Is that?
I mean, they do come through a lot. They come and stay,
like twice a week.
And I think that we've kind of embraced him, and that means a lot to her because clearly they love each other. There's, I mean, no doubt, they love each other, and
they're good parents.
They're good parents, and they provide for the baby. And seeing her as a mum, I can just see that it's something she's wanted from being 3, 4, 5 years old. That's she wanted a baby. I mean, she's always been, with kind of our granddaughter and grandson. She adores them, and she just absolutely loved it. And I think I just watch her now, and that baby. I mean, I babysat for him. They went out to look at the fireworks, so I was left with him, and he knew I wasn't his mum. I was cuddling him to sleep, and he kept waking up, and and I thought he knows.
He's so attached,
and
as well.
It's just lovely because she gets the whole attachment thing because of herself and because of where we come from and everything. And so, I just keep encouraging her and saying, you're a really, really good mum, and she is.
I think it's helped as well for her to make sense of her own story as well, because she can see she can see how she feels about her child, and she can see how she responds to her child, and then sees the gaps in her own experience. And it's kind of like it's this sort of cyclical sense of, that makes much more sense of me and my siblings and my world. And it's been a real positive. It's it's unusual, but we're expecting another grandchild. But
I mean, I think reflecting on it and it all happening, and he's here now, and of course we all love him, and he's gorgeous, and he's a really good baby, because we were like, when she was first pregnant, oh well, you're gonna know it, when he wakes up through the night, and when he does this, and when he does that, he does none of it. He sleeps
12 hours.
He does whatever. And he's
2 months old.
He's on her.
Hours.
He's on her. She knows, and he's just on her, and she does that. And many people say, oh, that's not right, but we obviously know it's really good for them. And so he's a very, very good, content baby. She started to wean him. He just takes to it, water for duck's back. He just does it all. And, and I think that, I just can see that for her, looking at the personality that she has, this has probably saved her. And Scott, Tris, you know her, this has probably saved her from going down some really bad paths. And, and I remember the moment I found out she was pregnant, and I was absolutely horrified, even though I was expecting it. I remember just kind of thinking, hold on, this lad, he's got a good job, he's got a nice car, doesn't drink, doesn't smoke, doesn't take drugs, and I thought...
Loves her.
He loves her. She loves him. So it was kind of thinking, actually, it's not that bad, is it? And and he's besotted with her, and she's besotted with him. Absolutely, you know. So I think she could have taken a few paths that would have been really worrying, but actually this has kind of reined her in, and just for her, she's fulfilled. She's got what she wanted in life.
And he's handy with DIY, which is an absolute
that's even better for you. Yeah, so you've got something.
We talk about tools and everything.
But it's interesting because, you know, we've known each other now nearly, quite a few years, should we say, and our families have changed a lot in those years.
Oh yeah. And,
you know, if there's one thing that can be said for you and your family is you're forever changing and adjusting and all that. We're probably the same, but we probably don't see it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it's probably just one of those things that we don't recognize in ourselves because you just get used to things. But with Rosa, I mean, the first time I met her, she's very driven. She's very, I would go as far as say very bossy. She is very bossy. She's quite a bossy young lady. But the one thing that I will say is, as soon as you had the grandchildren, she was like a carer for those babies. You know, every time I saw her, she had a baby in her arms. You know, it didn't matter which one it was, she had a baby in her, and it was so evident that she's got that nature, she's got that personality.
Yeah.
And then, you know, we know you went through, you know, as we've all been through, you know, we've had interesting days with all of our children, haven't we? But it's clear that, you know, this is what she was meant to do, and you know, if it's been the making of her. And yes, this time last year it was a terrifying thought. I mean, she was pregnant this time last year without knowing it, but you know, you did ask me about my year and about the family. We kind of started to talk about like downsizing. Oh, should we look for like a smaller home and all of that? And then our son, Corey, decides he wants to come and live back at home because it's going to be too expensive.
Crikey,
You know, he's finished university. And the prices of you know, he works now, the prices of where he, you know, so he's come back home. Obviously, Kirsty's still here with Elsie, so we're kind of fully loaded. And I think our thoughts of downsizing and going anywhere else is just, all I can think is we need to build in the loft, we need extra bedrooms.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, I'm not sure it was your idea, Paula, to downsize. I'm not sure that was really your intentions, was it? No,
I think it was interesting because when we looked at it, you know, when we started talking about like, shall we sell up and move, Al was looking at like places out in the sticks, like one bedroom, you know, build a fire to keep yourself warm. And I was looking at one of the nicest estates in Cramlington, the best estates, you know, and I'm kind of going, well, this is what I want. And he was going, well, this is what I want. And I said, there's no way you're getting me there. And he said, there's no way you're getting me there. I thought, it's definitely not. It's definitely not. It's not right.
It's not the time.
And, you know, I mean, I love family. From being a young girl, you know, I'm a gatherer and I love people and I love everybody coming around. So it really does suit me, you know, the family being around. But there is that sense of, you know, we've got Al's brother here at Christmas, we had his mum here.
There's 15 of us on Christmas Day.
Yeah.
And I set the table for 12 because I couldn't count.
Awkward moment.
But, you know, it's just kind of, I mean, you know, like thinking about Kirsty, you know, she's 29, she's got a 4-year-old and she's here. And it was funny because I was listening to Radio 4, I think, the other day, and they were saying that, 43% of kids up to 40 still live with their parents. It was something like that, statistics. And I thought, wow.
Probably downsizing, you know.
And, you know, you kind of think it is really, really hard. You know, I mean, Kirsty would love to have somewhere. Kirsty would love to be somewhere, you know, but it's just impossible. She works really, really hard. And she's a lovely mum and she provides and she does it all. But it's just really difficult just to start out there.
No,
so,
So that's it. We need a big house forever. See?
Well, I mean, we should just set up a commune, to be honest with you.
That would be perfect.
Take one half, we have the other half. We can have a little office in the middle for podcasts and stuff, and then that would be it. It would be great.
I mean, actually, I would be quite happy to buy a bigger house.
Yeah.
I want to go back to my 8 bedrooms that we used to have because, we're just...
Yeah, I don't, strangely enough. So the man who decorated the 8 bedrooms and heated them. So would you be interested in finding out, used to, Scott and Tris and Paula, what the most downloaded podcasts of the year were?
Yeah.
Yeah, we would hope that one of them is ours of last year, wouldn't we, Paula?
Yeah, definitely.
Well, I'll give you a rundown of the top 3, if that would be of interest to you. So, in 3rd place, which was a February. Sorry, let me just have a look here. A February episode, which was actually with our friend of the show, Elaine Amy. Oh, so yeah, so she came in and she was there as top 3. Yes, a little ripple of applause. We don't want to get it. Yeah, and so that was an episode where we just talked about adoption as adopters, and we excluded anyone who has been adopted, and we were open and honest and frank. And we should get Elaine back on, shouldn't we? Because she's...
I remember that one now. Now you've explained it, because some of them have left my brain. So yeah.
And then the second most listened to episode was was an episode in February again as well, actually.
Well, pre-aneurysm.
Yeah, pre-aneurysm.
That's not saying very much, is it?
Yeah, it's not saying very much. And it was the episode where we talked about the Somerset judgment, and also the episode about meeting birth parents with Charlotte. Do you remember that, Scott?
Yeah, kind of. I remember. I think
every year when we look across all of our episodes, every year, the ones that consistently get into the top kind of 3 or 4 post-adoption contact mailing length is always a high one. Yeah. So with eager anticipation, have you got any hopes or aspirations for the final one? Is this it?
I think the top listened to one was, or downloaded one was the one where you updated everybody on my health. There you go. Everybody needed to hear about
that. Doesn't count. That was a news broadcast.
Well, actually, the most viewed webcast, Scott, of the year was the one where you probably have no recollection of it. It was when I came to Ireland. And we did it in your
the offices.
Yeah. And we had over 1,000 views. There were 1,000 plus views and all kinds of things.
Yeah, so that was the top webcast. I actually do remember that, and I've watched it the other day, actually.
As
a reminder. Yeah. I actually got quite teary watching it as well, because I thought, my God, how rough did I look?
Looked fairly normal to us. Anyway, that's enough of that. The most listened to podcast actually was last year, at the beginning of January, we had a podcast with 2 guests. And we talked about therapy, and actually therapies are really... It was Tris and Paula's podcast. It was the most listened to podcast.
Thank you for listening. Good night.
And on that bombshell...
See, they always want to listen to the women behind the men.
Something like that, yeah. Well, I think people there's absolute truth in that, and I think that I think that used to bring Scott and I are very measured, and I think used to kind of.
Well, I think as well because we talk all the time, like you and I, and obviously these guys can listen to it or not. I mean, Tris doesn't listen to them very much.
I don't.
I retweet them as well.
Yeah, but I think when we're talking to each other, it's very much you and I. We could literally be sitting having a coffee or a beer or whatever, and just chatting to each other. Yeah, so what we say is like that. But I think when you add these 2 into it, it brings a different perspective, because what we see is very different to what they probably see. And it's interesting when Paula started off about the year and how sometimes she rings you in London. I am you, Al. That is what I'm like, because Tris will ring me and say, well, Jacob's done this or Brandon's done that. And I'm just like, well, what do you want me to do? I'm not there, so I can't do anything. And also, I would never ring you and tell you. So why would you ring me and tell? Do you know, that kind of way? So that is very, relate totally to that, because there is a point where you have to go, actually, do you know what? I have to listen. I can't do anything. I literally can't do anything. I am stressed listening to you, but what can I do? I can't do anything apart from listen. So
maybe Tris and I need to ring each other and say, this is what's happened.
Yeah.
You should start your own podcast and park it all there.
Maybe we should, Chris. Maybe that's a good idea.
Yeah, but I think it just adds to the different perspective of couples, and I think maybe that's what was relatable to that episode, was the fact that there was two couples, and most of our listeners are parents or carers or even therapists, actually, or whoever it was that was listening. I think just to hear that kind of the two sides to the story, but also the different views and the different perspectives is actually something that we don't hear, because we know this year especially, the podcast it's kind of blowing my head when Al sends me numbers and stuff, because I'm not sure that I really understand it. But across the board, we are a very popular podcast, weirdly, and just by adding that different perspective, that just adds something else to it, and that was one of the reasons why I wanted to have you back. Really,
yeah.
See, Paula, we bring the lived experience to the podcast. That's what.
We should set up like a yin and yang podcast, shouldn't we? We should cover the same subject, but we're like the avoidant episode, and they're the ambivalent episode.
I think just going back to therapy and stuff. Like I say, we've had Claire, she's called, who's been really amazing, and she kind of met us. She got a measure of us. She got a measure of Al. She got a measure of me, and so I've been able just to go and talk to her, and. You just think as couples, as adoptive parents, and this is to all people, it's really, really good just to have somebody that has got a measure of you, and a measure of your kids, and a measure of your family, the dynamics, and she knows, she totally gets how he sees things, and she gets how I see things. She's very encouraging, and I've moved on massively since. Talking to her, and I just think that if there are people out there really struggling, it is really, really worth it just to get it, because I kind of go in that room or have a phone call, and I come out of it feeling very different, and I think we all need that kind of backup, because him and I we are very, very different in our approach to stuff that comes, the trauma that hits you all of the time, and it's just good often to have that balance. But also, one of our daughters who was kind of out of the family and is back with the family, it's also just really helpful just to have an outsider, but also as a couple to actually to learn that you do see things differently, you get things differently, and just to kind of, rather than this is it.
Well, I think I totally agree with that, and I think that for me the benefit has always been that I don't want to park my stuff anywhere. I do want to park my stuff anywhere, but I don't want to talk about it. I want to just park it. So you get to your release valve. I get my release valve, and then we can come together and we can talk about the stuff that matters in a way that we both feel legitimized by that.
Yeah.
So that's sort of like systemic therapy. But this isn't the episode about therapy, so we've done that, haven't we?
Well, we still don't do therapy because it's been too busy this year. But I'm not sure. I mean, I in some ways, it should be something that's available to everyone, for parents and young people, children. Because actually, to weave your way through this flipping maze of parenting anyway is difficult, but add on the complexities that we've got. And that's not me doing the woe is me before you all start writing in, because, I'm just saying that, actually to be better parents and carers, actually sometimes you do need that kind of, that what's it board.
See, I do something completely different. If I reach that level where I need to do something, I jump in the car, I drive down to the ocean, and sit on the cliffs by the Atlantic and just look out to sea. And I'll do that for half an hour. I won't even maybe get out of the car. Sometimes I will, but it's really windy and blustery. And I'll just go and sit and look at the ocean. Then I'll drive back home. And that's me. That's my self-care. That's my therapy. It's I suppose it's some of the skills I learned in Thailand around meditation and just mindfulness. But I find that really useful to do that. It's that phrase, isn't it? Stop the world, I want to get off. And I just do that. It gives me a break. It gives me half an hour to breathe, in my own company without any interruptions. And then I feel fine again. So I think people need to just work out what works for them. And if that works, do that. And if not, then do something else. But there will be something that people can work out for themselves that they'll find useful, as you have done with visiting a therapist. It works for you, so that's good.
And having a horse. I love that.
Yeah.
That's my ocean.
Yeah, it's an expensive one.
Yeah.
Let it on that bombshell. Well, we've been at this for an hour.
On that bombshell. Yeah,
sorry.
I was just going to say on that bombshell, 2023. Now we are, fingers crossed, touch wood, and all that. We're hopefully all going on a Coates Casson-Rennie jaunt, aren't we?
It has to happen. It has to happen.
Slightly terrifying.
Well, this was supposed to happen in 2020, wasn't it? But there was a thing called a pandemic that took over.
The week before?
Yeah, the week, literally the week before, wasn't it? So we couldn't go. And then the next year, obviously, Thailand wasn't available. But fingers crossed in Easter this year, the 6 of us, the numbers are getting smaller and smaller, which is brilliant. Complex, but we'll be going to Thailand. So that's going to be one of our highlights of 2023. But I did want to ask, and I know that, I don't normally lead Al, but any hopes, dreams for 2023?
Well, I've been thinking about for me as an individual or podcast.
No, just whatever.
All of it. None that I'm prepared to share.
None. No. Just get through the year will be enough.
No, I don't see. I think that I want to be I want to enjoy my 11-year-old, and I think that it's really that I'm very conscious, having had several teenagers, that these moments before adolescence kick in are really precious, and so I really want to make sure that I enjoy that before. And not that adolescence is bad, or not that she's going to turn into a monster, but she might. But I think that I'm just conscious that this is a great time with children, and I think that's going on holiday, all of that kind of stuff. I really want to I want to have a lush time with her.
I mean, therapists that I've talked about, one thing she does say to us, and I think I may have said this last time, but she just said, of all of the things that have gone on in your family and everything, they still come back to you. She said, you have given out something. And I mean, Rosa's partner, he loves being here. He loves being amongst it all. He's, him and his brother there. Noisy chaos. Had a games night last night, and he loves it. And, and I think, it's kind of, it's what I am. I am a gatherer, and so I kind of create this.
Yeah, you bring people together. Yeah.
And I am good at it. I am good at it. And I think that, one thing she's encouraged me with all of the time is just that, they still all, want to be home at the hub of the home. And I think that's really, I take that as a real positive of adoption. I looked at Rosa and Kirsty the other day, just having a big hugging each other. And I thought, without us, they wouldn't even know each other. And yet, they're really close, really love each other. And I thought, I can go out of this world knowing, I've brought a real good, family together. We have, not me. We have.
No, it's you.
I do you know what? I have to say, Paula, that's something that I feel as well, because, Fraser obviously doesn't live with us. He knows, because, we've discussed this with him, that he's better off not living with us. He's 24 now, lives with his girlfriend. I think that 2023, 24 will probably see an addition to our family in some way.
I've got 2 bricks at the back.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, we are kind of. I mean, we can't stop it. If that's what they want to do, that's what they want to do. Brandon still lives with us. Brandon has no intentions of going anywhere because, he's just Brandon. But Jacob is the complete opposite of that. As soon as Jacob can be independent, and similar to what you were saying earlier, that sometimes it feels. It does feel like he didn't need new parents. He needed care. He needed permanency. He needed that kind of just to feel part of something, but maybe not a new family. But
I disagree. I think no. One word both you and Paula have missed, and Al have missed. They did need care, but they also needed love, and love was something that they and I'm explicit in this. Love is something that our children were missing when they came. They've been in the care system for a long, long time, arriving to us at 7 and 8. They hadn't been loved for a long, long time. They've been a resource in the care system. And that's indicative that, all three of our children arrived as 7 and 8 years old, but with tiny, tiny feet, like baby size 8 and 9 and 10 and 11, the baby sized feet. And within a couple of years, their feet were like adult size 6, 7, 8, and it was crazy. And to me, the missing ingredient was simply that they wanted to be loved. Mm-hmm. You can forget everything else. The children blossomed because they were loved. And I think that's the bit that we overlook all too often.
Well, I think that actually, for us, definitely, speaking about that publicly is quite controversial because, we try and cover everything. We try not to offend people, but some people do get offended by that kind of assumption that that's all they need. We know that's not, and that's not what you're saying.
No.
You're saying. But I think that we kind of steer clear of talking about that because it gets us in trouble.
Yeah, well, me, I wear my heart on my sleeve. Yeah. I'm a Norwich boy, so I speak as I find.
It's belonging as well, isn't it? It's belonging that we've given our children. But for something like you said, like you expressed with Jacob, is that, but he wants his own freedom in a way that is just unusual for a biological
and him and Rosa get on, or they did get on so well. They're like two peas in a pod. I mean, they literally are like two peas in a pod. And gratefully that
those peas never
the twain met. But yeah, exactly. but that, I think that's why kind of I relate to that. Although we have boys, you have majority 5 to 6 of our girls. So like Tris says, we've got bricks at the back door, and we're touch wood so far. We've not been in that position where we've had an addition that we don't that we're not ready for as a family.
I told the boys that the bricks will disappear on my 60th birthday. So when I hit 60, the bricks can go, and then I can be afforded the title of grandfather. But until I'm 60, the bricks will stay at the back door, and the boys know they're there, and I show them to them regularly.
Excellent.
I mean, there was one thing that happened, maybe more for me than my daughter. One of my daughters who were going through a really difficult time, and I was kind of really frightened at one point, and I remember just having this overwhelming feeling of love for it in the midst of chaos and fight. And I just remember putting my arms around her and I said, no matter what you do to me and no matter what happens, I love you 100%, and I always will. And she was a bit like freaked out about it, but I felt it, and I still feel it. I still feel it today, and I really do. And we're building up a relationship again. And I just think that it's just there. We have that kind of capacity to love beyond measure. And as parents, and it's different, but it's real.
So I'm going to throw the question back to you. What are you aspiring for 2023?
Work-wise, for FASD Ireland, it's going to be a colossal work year for us. We're on the brink of some major funding, some major recognition across the country. We've just agreed with the National Council for Special Education that FASD is going to be taught to the special educational needs officers across the country to start recognising that children with FASD need support in schools. That's a first. It's a massive revelation. We're working closer and closer with TUSLA and the HSE, which is your Children's Services and NHS equivalent. So as an organisation, we've got a lot of work to do. In terms of the sunflower, sorry?
Personally?
Well, personally, I mean, I was going to say in terms of the sunflower, which is the other hat that we wear, I've just come back from Florida, having opened the Hidden Disability Sunflower office in Orlando. So that's a big success for us in that sense. And I'm going to be looking after that office for a fair while, so there'll be a bit of a stretch for us in terms of looking after that. And I think that will give us some challenges distance-wise. But personally, Jacob is doing his leaving cert, so that's almost like A levels at school. Mm-hmm. So we have to drive that fine balance of home life, homework, and education. Brandon is very much a young man now, and he's holding down a career. He's driving. He's independent. We just need to encourage him to develop his social skills, to make some friends, and to have the confidence to do so. Mm. And Scott's back at work now, working part-time, 20 hours a week. So that's a good start. And
a good start. That's where it finishes. No, that's all I'm doing from now on. I'm 20 hours a week, mate. That's it. I'm done with the full-time malarkey.
Scott's on light duties.
Yeah, I think there's lots of things that we could all dream of. I think this year's taught me one thing, that you only get one life to live, and it's really important that you do try and just do what you need to do, because if you don't, then you're a bit knackered, aren't you? And I think for me, just to enjoy things. Do you know what I mean? Just to enjoy. So yes, work's important, and this is important, that's important. But actually, like our little tour thing that we're planning for the year, that's really important, because actually it's fun. It's something that we can do. Yes, it's going to take some organising, but yeah, it's fun. So yeah, there's lots of things in there. But I think that probably good health. That sounds so corny, but it does, doesn't it? But that's just the way it is. So yeah,
excellent. Well, that's probably a good place to end it then, isn't it? That's a good.
Thank God, I was a bit bored now. So.
Well, on that bombshell, I'm wishing you all the best for 2023. Thank you, Tris, for coming on. Thank you, Paula, for coming on.
Yes, thank you, guys. Appreciate it. Yeah, well done, Tris. Just clatter your mud around, as if to say, right, I'm done.
And in another year, we'll have you on again, and we'll see how that goes. And we don't want to build your role too much.
Sure. Hopefully we'll have a holiday to talk about.
What we might do, there was always talk of us doing a podcast on the River Kwai, because that was part of our itinerary, wasn't it?
A podcast on the River Kwai. That's quite a...
We could do that.
That's quite a dramatic name for it.
Yeah,
podcast on the River Kwai.
Yeah, we shall reenact the explosion of the bridge over the River Kwai for the podcast. That sounds like an absolute blast, something like that.
Yeah,
cause a cultural incident and maybe get evicted from the country. And on that bombshell, literally. So look after yourselves, and I will look forward to speaking to you all in 2023.
Yes, have a good new year.
And you
too.